I'm here to talk to you about how to change people's minds. And with any luck, I'll be able to change yours as well. As you may know, skepticism is about a certain way of looking at the world, just as any ism out there. But ideally, it is more than that, more than just maintaining a particular list of values and beliefs. Ideally, it should be a way of understanding how we form those beliefs to begin with. This is what ought to set a skeptic apart. A skeptic toolset might be said to include a curious mind, a rational method, and a willingness to question everything, especially oneself. Such have been the tools of the modern Enlightenment. With ideas as big as these, it's not surprising that we want to share them, to act on them, and with any luck to change the world we live in. But how do we do that? I'd like to start the task of answering that question with a quote by Einstein. The formulation of a problem is often more essential than its solution. I think I could speak for many here that we have participated in, if not experienced secondhand, many debates where it seemed like one or both of the people could never be persuaded by any argument, no matter how logical. It might have sounded something like, "You're wrong because insert logical argument here, so change your mind already." I liken this to kicking the tires on your car when it won't start and demanding it to answer for itself. Or for the geeks in the room, like being on Star Trek and saying, "Computer, make them understand." We just want to know what the trick is, what that little bit of magic is that unlocks Pandora's box. What's the solution? If you hold to the notion that all people, or even most people, believe what they do for reasons which they've carefully thought out, you'd be wrong. In his article, The Science of Why We Don't Believe Science, Chris Mooney describes how we may think we're being scientists when we're actually being lawyers, when prompted to evaluate our most favored beliefs. In other words, we can sometimes become so emotionally invested in our beliefs that we seek to defend them like a lawyer who will use any argument necessary to win. So you might ask, why all this emotional investment? Have we not yet evolved to realize that the truth or falsehood of something is more important than how we feel about it? Certainly it would be advantageous if we had. Dan Pierce of the Single Dad Laughing blog, in a post titled, "Why Do You Believe What You Believe?" wrote that everything always went so much smoother in all the dynamics of his life when he adopted the beliefs of his family and friends. He said it was fear that motivated him, fear that discourages anything that might threaten a family bond. You see, these beliefs are not merely a database of discovered facts that we've collected over our lives. They are the building blocks of our identities, the social glue that holds us together, and the measure by which we judge those we encounter. They mean a lot to us. One of the most important adaptations in our evolutionary history was to become a social animal. It would seem that this is more immediately accessible and or advantageous for our survival than developing swollen heads that carry 3-pound brains in them, capable of rational thought. So I think this might be why those simplistic and self-preserving instincts are often more prevalent than unbiased rationality. Evolution is not perfect, after all. It is not survival of the fittest, but merely survival of the good enough. Evolution is change, and change is struggle. And adaptation often comes at the fringes of normalcy. What seems relatively fringe even these days in this age of supposed enlightenment is having a nature of real self-awareness. Robert Kegan, developmental psychologist of Harvard University and author of The Evolving Self, says that successfully functioning in a society with diverse values requires us to have a relationship to our own reactions rather than be captive of them. What he means by reactions is our tendency to make right or true that which is merely familiar, and wrong or false, that which is merely strange. But we don't just do this with ideas. We do it also with each other. If we are not self-aware, we have a tendency to think of the people that we're trying to persuade as the embodiment of wrongness and falsehood, without being consciously aware of it. Not just incorrect, but bad and unworthy. While our words may be all logic and fact, we may also be communicating unwittingly and subconsciously these perceived value judgments of these people that you're trying to talk to. If this is the case, you might as well be holding a gun to their head and demanding that they trust you. Historically, new ideas have been spread by one of two methods: by decree of authority, power, and force, or through relationships of trust. If you were at the MASH Film Festival, you might recall a certain video by the RSA about the empathic civilization. It talked about how as a species we have redefined many times what community means to us. We have expanded our concept of community from immediate blood ties and tribes to religious and national identities, and finally to identities based on shared ideology, mainly through the advent of the internet. I'm here to say that the key to unlocking ideological barriers with each other in this global community is not the big gun of a better, stronger, or more logical argument, at least not alone. The key is empathy. To have empathy is to see that other person as someone who is, for the most part, like you, sharing the same values, needs, and reality. This belief is emitted subconsciously and helps to unlock the door of trust. Even for me, it took hearing it from someone I could trust before I would try on some new ideas that have now become core to me. There's a religious axiom that I love to flip on its head, and that is, love the sinner, hate the sin. But I would say, love the religious, hate the religion. Or even expand that broader to love the person, hate the dogma. Of course, I'm not saying that facts don't matter. Of course they do. But when it comes to changing minds, facts are like food. It's hard to eat when it's being thrown at your head. You might be disappointed at this point that this was not a step-by-step how-to with lots of tips and tricks and psychology of how to win the game of bending people to your will. There's a parallel that comes to mind here from a personal story of mine. A few years ago, I began to be drawn into the online PUA community, which is pickup artists. And I remember thinking, this is so cool. If I can just learn all their awesome tricks and make women like me, then I'll be popular and happy and life will be perfect. What happened, though, was that in listening to all their tricks and explanations of why they worked, it became apparent to me that these tricks were designed to emulate something more substantial and fundamental than just behaviors. It also became apparent that trying to keep up a facade of something that wasn't really there would be exhausting. And besides, I didn't want to just emulate that thing. I wanted to have it. So instead of becoming a PUA, I decided to work on becoming a better person. And so we come full circle to the quote at the beginning by Albert Einstein. The formulation of a problem is often more essential than its solution. But I might say, sometimes choosing the right goal is more important than figuring out the best methods. To rework a complex machine like the human mind requires spending some time figuring out how that machine works, it's true. But more than that, we might find out, as we try to do that the best place to start is to rework ourselves. Thank you. Can I trouble somebody for a glass of water?
That jug in the back. Do you have any cups? Just give him the jug.
Anyway, questions, thoughts? Go ahead.
I wonder what type of argument you're thinking of, because you talked about people getting entrenched in arguments. But from what I understand, a lot of the time when you have these formal debates, the goal isn't to convince the other person, it's to convince the person watching.
Yes, sometimes that's true. And actually, originally I was going to work in an anecdote from the movie Thank You for Smoking. Have you seen that? Yeah. Admittedly, I'm focusing more in my talk here about how we directly address the people we're trying to change the minds of. And I'll also admit that I'm thinking mostly about, I guess, sort of the atheist versus religious debates that happen, because they tend to blow up more than any other I've ever seen.
On the internet?
Yeah.
Shades of Phil Blake. The "Don't Be a Dick" speech.
I don't think I actually heard that one, but
That's good.
yeah. Go ahead.
One more comment. I think what you're saying is right. I think using fact-based arguments to try to disavow people with easily held beliefs, right? They're going to be receptive and they're going to be receptive. I think in terms of treating you as treating people out there who find themselves in atheist, their question is, first of all, be. Second of all, be good. Those two things, if people realize that you're there and that you're a good person, it might change a lot of what they perceive to be an atheist on their head. And the more people they know like this, the more likely they are to be accepting when it comes out and out down, for instance. So the same thing is held true with increasing acceptance of people in the LGBT community. The same thing is holding true with increasing acceptance of people who are using recreational drugs. When people realize that, hey, my doctor, or my whoever is, using marijuana is not just use a broad term, or that this person is, or this person is an atheist, and look, they give to charity, they do good things, and they're fun to hang around with, and do favors for me. People will become more accepting of what it means to be, be an author.
Yeah, and I think to talk about Jem's speech earlier, I caught most of it, and as I was listening to him, a lot of things sort of clicked together with that. I think it's really important to look at how we view each other people, and I think taking a deterministic view, I think we make a false dichotomy sometimes where we think people either have to be good or bad. And I think a better place to be is to value all people and to just look at their situation. Yes, it's a product of their life and their thinking and everything else, but still embrace them as a human when we deal with them.
I think we may want to be careful with the idea of trying to change people's minds too. I mean, in a lot of cases, that's what we want to do, but it's a matter of how you approach it. And really, it's ultimately up to each person whether or not their mind is changed, how quickly it happens, to what degree, and that. And so when you go into a conversation with somebody, particularly if you know that you'd rather they had a different opinion or you're not in agreement with the one that they have, just to remember that it's really up to them. And you can give them the tools and give them logical arguments and all of that, and be supportive in a change and be a good example of that change. But you still can't expect to always change everybody's minds. And I think sometimes there's an idea that we can change everybody's minds or I can get everybody over to my side, and that's not realistic because it's not up to you. I mean, I deal with clients for a living, and I have to remember this a lot, but I shouldn't be working significantly harder than them to change their own minds. Like, it's got to be them that puts the effort in. And you do everything you can to help facilitate that, but sometimes it's just not going to happen. So not to continue pushing at that point, because then you definitely will get even more pushback. So just to remember, it's their minds, not ours to change.
And I heartily agree with you, and I hope that came across in this, because that was
absolutely, just
okay.
to make that clear.
minds, but just to make them think. Like, get them asking these questions about things they might not have considered before. I think that would be a better goal than actually outright changing their mind.
You can't change somebody else's mind. Only you can decide what you think, how you feel. You just show them the way, help them along.
Go ahead.
Can you change someone's thought process?
With magnets.
The answer is yes.
I guess maybe the goal is to try and be a causal agent as much as you can. Go ahead.
I was a clergyman for 10 years. I was an Anglican priest, and up north in northern Manitoba, there's no question about it. There was a friend of mine who changed my mind. And he did it exactly the way you two talked, all three of you actually. Just by being there, being a friend, and saying, hey, Jim, take a look at what's really going on, and think about it for a second. It's a long story. Those of you that know it, it's fine. But basically what happened was a bunch of bricks fell out of my wall that day. And that was the process of becoming the first agnostic, leaving my Christianity behind. And now I live my life atheistically. But I got to that point, I always loved science. And that was, when I saw going on in the church, was leaving bricks fall off the wall. Somebody called me on it and said, as a trusted friend, said, come on, call a spade a spade. And that's exactly what I did.
Neat. Is that it?